There are moments inside the British monarchy that never appear on official calendars, never receive a press release from Buckingham Palace, and never become part of the carefully polished public image the British royal family works so hard to protect. Yet those quiet moments often become the ones that change everything, and according to reports from palace insiders, what recently unfolded behind the ancient walls of Windsor Castle may become one of the most emotionally charged turning points in the modern history of the monarchy, because for the first time in decades, Prince William, the future king, may have finally made a move that nobody thought even King Charles III would dare challenge, and the center of that storm was not a crown, not a title, and not a line of succession, but a portrait of Diana, Princess of Wales that some believe should never have disappeared in the first place. And once you hear what allegedly happened next, one question becomes impossible to ignore. Was this simply a tribute to a beloved mother, or was Prince William quietly sending a message to the entire monarchy that a new royal era has already begun? For more than 25 years, millions around the world have remembered Diana, Princess of Wales, as the emotional heart of modern royalty, the woman who could walk into hospitals, charities, crowded streets, and international crises with a kind of human warmth that transformed public duty into something deeply personal. And yet, according to royal commentators, while the public continued celebrating the legacy of Diana, Princess of Wales, something very different may have been happening behind palace doors, because sources close to the institution claim that one of the most important official portraits ever painted of Diana, Princess of Wales, was quietly placed into storage, wrapped, archived, and almost forgotten by the very institution that once called Diana, Princess of Wales, the future queen of the nation. And if that claim is true, then the next question becomes even more uncomfortable, because if a portrait of Diana, Princess of Wales, truly disappeared for decades, who wanted that portrait out of sight? And more importantly, who finally decided it was time for Diana, Princess of Wales, to come home? According to long-standing royal speculation, that answer may lead directly to Prince William, a man who the public often sees as calm, disciplined, and institutionally loyal, yet palace insiders have repeatedly described Prince William as someone who never forgot the emotional cost of losing his mother, never forgot walking behind the coffin of Diana, Princess of Wales, while the entire world watched in silence, and never forgot what the years after that loss allegedly looked like inside royal walls, because while the cameras moved on, childhood grief did not move on with them, and according to several royal biographers, that grief slowly transformed into something far more powerful: patience. Not public anger, not reckless rebellion like the path later chosen by Prince Harry, but something far more dangerous to an institution built on protocol, because Prince William reportedly learned the rules, studied the hierarchy, understood the machinery of succession, and waited for the exact moment when the future king could use the monarchy itself as his instrument. And here is where this story becomes impossible to ignore, because according to reports that have fueled royal circles in recent weeks, Prince William allegedly spent years reviewing historical placement records, ceremonial traditions, and gallery protocols connected to the private halls of Windsor Castle, not for publicity, not for headlines, but for something deeply personal. Something connected to a portrait that represented not just a mother, but unfinished history. So ask yourself this. If you were 15 years old when the world watched you bury your mother, and 25 years later you finally held the institutional power to correct what you believed was a historical wrong, what would you do? Would you stay silent? Or would you quietly rewrite history? Because according to palace insiders, while the public was focused on official engagements involving King Charles III, public appearances from Catherine, Princess of Wales, and ongoing global headlines surrounding Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, something much quieter may have been happening inside the deepest ceremonial spaces of Windsor Castle, where access is tightly controlled, records are carefully preserved, and every placement on every wall carries institutional meaning that can last for generations. Multiple commentators now suggest that Prince William was not acting alone, because if such a symbolic restoration truly took place, one royal figure may have played an equally important role. And that figure was not King Charles III, not Catherine, Princess of Wales, and certainly not anyone from the Sussex camp, but rather the woman many royal observers describe as the hardest, most disciplined, and most institutionally respected member of the family, and Princess Royal. For decades, and Princess Royal has earned a reputation for loyalty, precision, and complete emotional discipline. Yet behind that controlled public image lies a royal figure who witnessed the rise of Diana, Princess of Wales, the collapse of the marriage between King Charles III and Diana, Princess of Wales, and the long, complicated journey that eventually brought Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom, into the center of royal life. And some believe that if anyone inside the monarchy truly understood what a restoration of Diana, Princess of Wales, would symbolize, it may have been and Princess Royal. But what exactly happened behind those doors? Did Prince William and Anne, Princess Royal, quietly prepare a move that would permanently reshape the emotional hierarchy of the monarchy? And if that happened, how did Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom, react when the truth finally emerged? Because according to the most explosive palace speculation yet, the night Diana, Princess of Wales, allegedly came home may have become the night the balance of power inside the monarchy quietly began to shift, and what happened next reportedly left even King Charles III facing a choice that could define the final legacy of his reign. And that is exactly where this story becomes even darker. Because before Prince William could make any move at all, there was one painful truth about what happened after the death of Diana, Princess of Wales, that almost nobody outside palace walls was ever supposed to hear. And according to insiders, that truth may explain everything. The truth, according to some of the most persistent stories ever to circulate around the British monarchy, did not begin with a portrait, did not begin with a ceremonial wall inside Windsor Castle, and did not even begin with the rise of Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom. Because if palace insiders are to be believed, the emotional war that eventually shaped Prince William, the future king, began on the night the world lost Diana, Princess of Wales, and while millions of people stood outside palaces with flowers, tears, handwritten letters, and candlelight. Something very different may have been happening behind closed royal doors, where grief, power, legacy, and institutional survival were all competing for space at the exact same moment. According to long-standing reports discussed by royal commentators for decades, some of the earliest conversations after the death of Diana, Princess of Wales, were not centered around public mourning, not centered around memorial planning, and not even centered around how the young princes would cope with unimaginable loss, but rather around protocol, assets, security, and institutional containment. Because when an institution as old as the monarchy feels threatened, the first instinct is often not emotional. The first instinct is structural, and if those reports are accurate, then the young Prince William may have learned far earlier than most children ever should that inside palaces, heartbreak and politics often arrive together. And that raises an uncomfortable question for every viewer watching right now. If you lost the most important person in your life at 15 years old, and then discovered that power, image, and protocol were already shaping how that loss would be remembered, would you ever truly forgive the system that claimed to protect your family? Because according to royal authors who have spent decades studying the emotional fractures inside the monarchy, Prince William did not simply grieve the loss of Diana, Princess of Wales. Prince William reportedly began noticing something even more painful, something that was happening quietly, gradually, almost invisibly, as the years passed. Because pieces of the public memory of Diana, Princess of Wales, allegedly began disappearing from the spaces where that memory should have remained permanent. Portraits became harder to find, ceremonial references became less frequent, official conversations became more selective, and according to multiple palace commentators, some of the rooms most strongly associated with Diana, Princess of Wales, no longer carried the same visible presence that once defined them, and while none of these reports have ever been officially confirmed by the palace, the speculation surrounding those years has never truly faded. At the same time, another transformation was happening in plain sight, because while Prince William was growing into adulthood, learning military discipline, understanding constitutional duty, and slowly preparing for the responsibilities of succession, Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom, was moving from controversial outsider to accepted royal figure. Then from accepted royal figure to trusted companion of King Charles III, and eventually from trusted companion to queen. And that transition, according to royal observers, may have been emotionally far more complicated inside the family than the public was ever allowed to see. Because while the world watched state banquets, balcony appearances, and carefully managed public smiles, insiders claim that Prince William never forgot how the story began, never forgot what the breakdown of the marriage between King Charles III and Diana, Princess of Wales, looked like from a child's perspective, and never forgot how deeply the name Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom, was connected to that history. And yet what makes this story even more fascinating is that unlike Prince Harry, who eventually chose books, interviews, documentaries, and public confrontation to express years of emotional frustration, Prince William reportedly chose something entirely different: silence. Not weakness, not surrender, not emotional distance, but silence as strategy, silence as observation, silence as preparation. And according to several senior royal commentators, that silence may have been the most powerful move of all, because while media attention focused on the increasingly public tensions involving Meghan Markle, Prince Harry, streaming platforms, memoirs, and global interviews, Prince William was doing something far less visible but potentially far more consequential: learning exactly how power moves inside a monarchy. So ask yourself this: which is more dangerous inside a centuries-old institution, The person who speaks loudly to cameras? Or the person who says almost nothing while quietly gaining authority? Because by the time Prince William married Catherine, Princess of Wales, many insiders began noticing something remarkable about the future king, something that separated Prince William from nearly every other public royal of the modern era. Because rather than fighting the institution, Prince William appeared to be mastering it, understanding ceremonial language, constitutional symbolism, charitable influence, internal alliances, and most importantly, timing. And no alliance may have mattered more than the quiet respect between Prince William and Anne, Princess Royal. Royal insiders have described Anne, Princess Royal, as one of the few senior royals whose influence is rarely discussed publicly but deeply respected privately, a woman whose work ethic, institutional memory, and uncompromising discipline have earned admiration across generations. And according to those same observers, if Prince William ever wanted to make a symbolic move that could never be reversed, then having the quiet support of Anne, Princess Royal, would change everything. And this is where the story takes a turn that even experienced royal watchers did not see coming. Because according to palace speculation, sometime during the last few years, private archival discussions reportedly began taking place inside Windsor Castle involving portrait records, gallery placements, ceremonial precedents, and historical restoration procedures, and while no official statement ever acknowledged those meetings, several commentators believe those conversations may have been connected to one specific image: the long-unseen portrait of Diana, Princess of Wales. And if that speculation is accurate, then this was never about emotion alone. This was about institutional legitimacy. This was about memory. This was about who gets remembered on the walls of history, and who gets quietly removed. So let me ask you something. If Prince William, the future king, truly believed his mother's place in royal history had been diminished, would Prince William simply accept that silence? Or would Prince William wait until nobody could stop the correction? Because according to the most explosive insiders yet, that answer may have arrived on one carefully chosen evening, when official schedules were unusually quiet, access to private ceremonial spaces became unusually restricted, and a small group of trusted staff reportedly received instructions that would change the emotional architecture of the monarchy forever. But if that evening truly happened, one person allegedly had absolutely no idea what was unfolding behind the walls of Windsor Castle. And according to palace speculation, that person was Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom. And what Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom, reportedly saw the next morning may have become one of the most emotionally devastating moments of the entire reign of King Charles III. Because by then, according to insiders, Diana, Princess of Wales, may no longer have been hidden in storage at all. And what happened when Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom, demanded answers allegedly left the entire palace in complete silence. By the time the private discussions inside Windsor Castle allegedly moved from quiet planning to active preparation, royal insiders claimed that Prince William was no longer acting like a grieving son searching for emotional closure, because according to those who closely study the inner mechanics of the monarchy, Prince William had evolved into something far more difficult for the institution to ignore, far more dangerous for anyone standing in the way, and far more strategic than most critics ever expected, because by this point, Prince William was not simply the son of Diana, Princess of Wales. Prince William was the future king, and inside a monarchy built on hierarchy, timing, and institutional memory, that distinction changes everything. According to palace speculation, the operation that allegedly brought the portrait of Diana, Princess of Wales, back into ceremonial visibility was not emotional, spontaneous, or symbolic in the casual sense of the word, because multiple royal commentators now suggest that every step was reportedly reviewed against archival precedent, every placement measured against historical standards, and every procedural detail examined with the kind of precision normally reserved for coronation planning, state funerals, or constitutional transitions, which raises an extraordinary possibility. What if Prince William was not restoring a portrait at all, but quietly preparing the monarchy for a future that already looked very different from the present? And if that possibility is true, then here's the question every viewer should ask right now. When a future king starts changing symbols before taking the throne, is that personal healing? Or is that the earliest sign of institutional takeover? Because according to reports circulating among senior royal observers, one of the most important parts of this alleged operation involved controlling timing, access, and visibility. And if those reports are accurate, then the evening chosen for the symbolic move was not random, not convenient, and certainly not accidental, because on that same day, Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom, reportedly had official commitments away from the central ceremonial spaces of Windsor Castle, creating what some insiders now describe as a perfect operational window. Now whether that timing was coincidence or careful planning remains unconfirmed, and as always, reports suggest far more than official statements ever reveal. But what makes this story so explosive is not simply where Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom, was that day. What makes this story extraordinary is who was reportedly inside the castle. According to palace speculation, the people granted access that evening were not media teams, not communication staff, and not junior aides, but a carefully selected group of trusted personnel with knowledge of royal archives, ceremonial placement, and historical gallery protocol. And according to multiple commentators, one senior royal figure allegedly insisted on being physically present for every single stage of the process. And that figure was none other than Anne, Princess Royal. For decades, Princess Royal has been described as the monarchy's steel backbone, a royal whose loyalty to duty rivals even the legendary discipline of Elizabeth II. And if insiders are correct, then the presence of Anne, Princess Royal, transformed this alleged portrait restoration from an emotional gesture into something much more powerful: institutional endorsement. So ask yourself something. If Anne, Princess Royal, personally stood beside Prince William during this moment, does that sound like family sentiment? Or does that sound like the monarchy quietly choosing its next center of gravity? Because according to reports that have stunned even veteran royal commentators, the portrait of Diana, Princess of Wales, was allegedly brought out of protective storage after more than 2 decades, carefully unwrapped under controlled lighting, examined for preservation integrity, and then prepared for placement inside one of the most symbolically powerful spaces in the castle. A gallery reserved for women whose influence helped define the emotional and institutional history of the crown. And when insiders describe what allegedly happened next, the details become almost impossible to ignore. The measurements were reportedly checked more than once. The frame alignment was reportedly confirmed by archival records. The spacing beside the portrait of Elizabeth II was allegedly reviewed against historical ceremonial guidelines. Nothing, according to speculation, was left to chance. And that may be the most revealing detail of all, because spontaneous emotional decisions can be challenged, but protocol cannot. Which raises another uncomfortable question. Did Prince William spend years learning the rules of monarchy simply so Prince William could one day use those rules against anyone who tried to erase the memory of Diana, Princess of Wales? Because according to the most emotional accounts of that evening, once the portrait of Diana, Princess of Wales, was finally positioned beside Elizabeth II, the room reportedly went silent. Not the silence of fear, not the silence of uncertainty, but the kind of silence that happens when history suddenly feels visible. When people standing in the room realize they may be witnessing something that will be talked about for generations. And according to several insider accounts, it was allegedly Anne, Princess Royal, who quietly broke that silence with words that some claim nobody in that room will ever forget. Now we cannot independently verify those exact words, and as always, reports suggest more than official archives confirm. But insiders claim that Anne, Princess Royal, looked toward the portrait of Diana, Princess of Wales, and simply acknowledged that this was where Diana, Princess of Wales, always belonged. And if that moment truly happened, then the emotional significance reaches far beyond a portrait, because what may have been restored that evening was not simply an image. What may have been restored was legitimacy. At that exact same time, according to reports, King Charles III was aware that private ceremonial activity was taking place, yet insiders claim no objections were reportedly issued, no emergency meetings were called, and no directives were allegedly sent to stop the process, which opens one of the biggest questions in this entire story. Did King Charles III know exactly what Prince William was doing? And if King Charles III did know, why was the king silent? Was that silence guilt? Was that silence acceptance? Or was that silence the first quiet acknowledgement that the future of the monarchy may already belong to Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales? Because according to palace commentators, while this deeply symbolic moment was allegedly unfolding inside Windsor Castle, one person remained completely unaware of what was happening. And if the reports are accurate, that person was Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom. No warning, no briefing, no advisory note, no ceremonial memo, nothing. And if that is true, then what happened next may have been even more explosive than the restoration itself. Because according to insiders, when Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom, returned and finally saw what had allegedly changed inside the walls of Windsor Castle, the reaction that followed may have exposed something the monarchy has been trying to hide for years. Not just old wounds, not just unresolved grief, but a silent power struggle already reshaping the reign of King Charles III. And what Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom, allegedly demanded the next morning reportedly forced King Charles III into one of the most emotionally impossible choices of his entire reign. a choice between the woman who stood beside him for decades and the son who may soon wear the crown. If palace speculation is even partially accurate, then the morning that followed inside Windsor Castle may have become one of the most emotionally charged mornings of the entire reign of King Charles III, because according to royal commentators who have followed internal family tensions for decades, Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom, reportedly returned expecting routine protocol, familiar ceremonial order, and the quiet predictability that comes from years of influence inside the institution. Yet what allegedly waited inside those historic corridors was not routine, not predictable, and certainly not something that Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom, was prepared to see, because according to insiders, the portrait of Diana, Princess of Wales, was no longer hidden in storage, no longer absent from ceremonial memory, and no longer quietly disconnected from royal symbolism. Instead, according to reports that have electrified royal circles, the image of Diana, Princess of Wales, allegedly stood in full view beside Elizabeth II, creating a visual message so powerful that several commentators now believe the placement itself carried more institutional meaning than many official speeches delivered over the last decade, because walls inside royal residences do not merely display history. Walls inside the monarchy define it. And here's the question every viewer should ask. If you spent decades helping reshape the public identity of an institution, and then one morning you discovered that the future king had quietly restored the memory of the one figure whose presence changed your entire life, would you see that as a tribute? Or as a warning? Because according to the most widely discussed palace speculation, Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom, allegedly reacted with immediate disbelief, not quiet reflection, not measured diplomacy, and not the carefully managed public composure that royal life normally demands, but with a kind of visible emotional shock that only happens when someone realizes a major decision has been made without consultation, without negotiation, and perhaps most importantly, without permission. Royal insiders claim that questions were allegedly asked within minutes. Who authorized this? Who signed off on this? Who opened the archive? Who approved placement? And perhaps the most revealing question of all, who gave Prince William the confidence to make a move this bold? According to commentators, the answer may have become obvious almost immediately, because as discussions reportedly intensified inside Windsor Castle, one name allegedly kept resurfacing in private conversations. And Princess Royal. And for those who understand the internal culture of the monarchy, that detail changes everything. Because support from junior advisors can be challenged. Support from communications teams can be ignored. Support from palace staff can be overridden. But quiet alignment between Prince William and Anne, Princess Royal, creates something far more difficult to reverse. Institutional legitimacy backed by generational authority. So ask yourself this. If the future king gains the trust of the most disciplined royal in the family before taking the throne, does the transition truly begin on coronation day? Or does the transition begin years earlier in rooms the cameras never enter? Because according to palace speculation, after the initial shock reportedly settled, attention allegedly turned toward one person capable of changing everything with a single sentence. King Charles III. And this is where the story becomes deeply personal. For decades, King Charles III fought public criticism, media pressure, political scrutiny, and generational controversy while building a life alongside Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom, and many royal historians openly acknowledge that few relationships inside modern monarchy have faced the level of public resistance that surrounded the rise of Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom, which makes the next alleged moment almost impossible to ignore. Because according to insiders, when Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom, reportedly turned toward King Charles III expecting intervention, expecting royal authority, expecting a private order that would immediately reverse everything, something very unexpected may have happened instead. Nothing. No immediate command. No urgent directive. No ceremonial objection. No institutional override. And according to the most explosive reports yet, King Charles III allegedly allowed the decision of Prince William to stand. Now let us be absolutely clear, official confirmation of these private conversations does not exist, and reports suggest far more than palace records publicly acknowledge. But if those insider claims are even partially accurate, then the silence of King Charles III may have carried more emotional weight than any public statement ever could. Because silence inside monarchy is rarely empty. Silence inside monarchy is often policy. Silence inside monarchy can be permission. And silence from a king can sometimes say what words never will. So let me ask you something. If King Charles III truly remained silent while Prince William restored the image of Diana, Princess of Wales, what does that silence really mean? Does that silence reflect regret? Does that silence reflect acceptance? Or does that silence reveal something even more profound? That King Charles III may already understand where the emotional future of the monarchy truly lives. Because while this alleged confrontation reportedly unfolded behind palace walls, another layer of transformation may have already been taking shape in public view, and many royal watchers now believe that the increasingly visible partnership between Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, is no longer simply preparation for future responsibility. It may already represent the emotional center of the modern crown. From global charity work to carefully managed public appearances, from constitutional symbolism to family image, from generational continuity to international diplomacy, the rise of Catherine, Princess of Wales beside Prince William has increasingly led commentators to ask whether the next era of monarchy has already begun long before the official transfer of power. And if that is true, then the restoration of Diana, Princess of Wales, may not have been about the past at all. It may have been about the future. It may have been about reminding the institution where public trust was built. It may have been about reminding the monarchy what emotional authenticity looks like. And perhaps most importantly, it may have been about signaling who intends to define the next chapter. Because according to palace insiders, after the portrait allegedly remained untouched, after no reversal reportedly came from King Charles III, and after the ceremonial placement allegedly survived its most vulnerable hours, whispers reportedly began spreading across private royal networks that something far bigger than a portrait had just happened. Not rebellion. Not confrontation. Not scandal. Succession. Quiet succession. Institutional succession. Emotional succession. And if those whispers are true, then one question becomes impossible to avoid. Did Prince William just make the first irreversible move of the next reign before ever wearing the crown? Because according to the most explosive palace speculation yet, the days that followed allegedly brought an even bigger signal, one that may have quietly confirmed that this was never a single emotional act, never a one-night restoration, and never a symbolic gesture performed in isolation. Because what began happening across royal communications, charitable visibility, and ceremonial emphasis reportedly suggested something even more dramatic. That the legacy of Diana, Princess of Wales, was no longer being restored privately. It may have started returning publicly. What happened in the days that allegedly followed inside the British monarchy may be even more revealing than the quiet restoration itself, because according to palace insiders, once the portrait of Diana, Princess of Wales, reportedly remained untouched, once no emergency reversal came from King Charles III, and once the symbolic placement beside Elizabeth II survived its most vulnerable first hours, something far more subtle allegedly began unfolding across the wider institution. Something that many royal commentators now believe may represent the earliest public signs of a monarchy quietly repositioning itself around Prince William, the future king, and Catherine, Princess of Wales, the Princess of Wales, long before the official transfer of the crown ever takes place. According to observers who closely monitor every charitable engagement, every communications release, and every carefully selected public appearance coming out of Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace, references to the emotional legacy of Diana, Princess of Wales, allegedly began appearing with new frequency, not in dramatic headlines, not in official declarations, and certainly not in ways that would trigger immediate media controversy, but in something far more effective, subtle. Institutional reinforcement. Charities historically associated with Diana, Princess of Wales, reportedly began receiving renewed visibility. Humanitarian themes once strongly connected to Diana, Princess of Wales, appeared more naturally in conversations surrounding Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales. Public messaging around emotional connection, modern service, and compassionate leadership seemed increasingly aligned with the values that once made Diana, Princess of Wales, the most beloved royal figure of an entire generation. And here is where the story becomes impossible to ignore, because if these changes were truly coordinated, then the alleged restoration of that portrait was never the final move. The alleged restoration may have been the opening move. So let me ask you something. When a future king restores a symbol of the past, and then the institution slowly begins restoring that legacy in public view, is that nostalgia? Or is that strategic succession? Because according to senior royal commentators, the emotional contrast between the public rise of Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, and the increasingly complicated headlines surrounding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle may be creating a very different image of the monarchy than what existed even 5 years ago. On one side, royal commentators see Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, presenting continuity, discipline, family structure, and constitutional stability. On the other side, the The global media continues to analyze interviews, memoirs, documentaries, and public tensions involving Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, creating what some believe is one of the most emotionally divided eras in modern royal history. And if Prince William truly understands public psychology as deeply as insiders claim, then perhaps the future king understands something even more important than titles, ceremonies, or constitutional procedure. Perhaps Prince William understands that in modern monarchy, whoever controls emotional memory often controls public legitimacy. And what name still holds more emotional power across generations than Diana, Princess of Wales? That question may explain why this story has shaken royal watchers around the world, because if the alleged restoration inside Windsor Castle truly happened, then the move was not simply about honoring a mother, not simply about correcting an old wound, and not simply about challenging the internal legacy of Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom. The move may have been about ownership of the monarchy's emotional future. And if that is true, then one question becomes impossible to avoid. Who truly holds the emotional center of the crown today? Is it King Charles III, a king still balancing legacy, history, and institutional pressure? Is it Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom, whose journey from controversy to queen remains one of the most debated transformations in royal history? Is it Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, whose global media presence continues reshaping public conversations about monarchy, family, and identity? Or has that center already shifted toward Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, a future king and future queen who increasingly appear to embody the exact emotional balance between tradition and modern trust that the institution desperately needs? Because according to palace insiders, one private conversation allegedly says everything. Reports suggest that in recent years, King Charles III privately expressed concerns about what happens to Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom, after the reign of King Charles III comes to an end, a detail that many commentators believe reveals just how aware the king may already be of the unresolved emotional tension between Prince William and Camilla, Queen of the United Kingdom. Now once again, these reports remain speculation, and reports suggest far more than official confirmation ever reveals, but even the existence of such conversations raises a fascinating possibility. What if King Charles III already understands that the next reign may not simply look different? The next reign may feel different. More disciplined. More emotionally strategic. More closely aligned with public memory. And perhaps more deeply connected to the unfinished legacy of Diana, Princess of Wales. So let me ask you one final question. If the boy who walked behind the coffin of Diana, Princess of Wales at 15 years old truly spent 25 years quietly learning how to master the very institution that once failed his mother, what happens when that boy finally becomes king? Will Prince William simply preserve the monarchy? Will Prince William modernize the monarchy? Or will Prince William quietly rebuild the monarchy around the values of Diana, Princess of Wales, and the public trust now carried by Catherine, Princess of Wales? Because if the whispers from inside Windsor Castle are even partially true, then what began as a forgotten portrait may eventually be remembered as the first visible sign that the next chapter of the British monarchy did not begin with a coronation. The next chapter may have begun in silence, on an ancient wall, beside Elizabeth II, where the face of Diana, Princess of Wales, allegedly returned to the place many believe Diana, Princess of Wales, always belonged. And now we want to hear from you. Do you believe Prince William is already quietly shaping the future of the monarchy behind the scenes? Do you believe the emotional legacy of Diana, Princess of Wales, is finally being restored through Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales? Or do you believe the real power struggle inside the royal family is only just beginning? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your perspective matters. And if you enjoy deeply researched royal stories, hidden palace dynamics, and the untold power moves shaping the future of the crown, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us for the next chapter. Because inside the monarchy, the loudest changes rarely happen in public. The loudest changes often begin in silence.